Take these off. Hello. Okay, we are back. Day 2 of your wildest fantasy football show. So, is there anything that you regret saying immediately following going live for the first time in, I think, our entire lives?
No, I regret nothing. Strong believer, and mean what you say what you mean. You win some, you lose some.
I'm
too
sarcastic to follow your rules on that. I think I do take back some of the Carson Wentz slander that I had yesterday.
Yep.
That's my quarterback. I don't mean to give a nice flashback to T.O., but that is my quarterback. And he doesn't deserve that. He doesn't deserve to be kicked when he's down. And I don't want to cause him any extra injury by kicking him while he's down.
Right.
You know,
painful. He broke
if
both
anybody was to be kicked while they're down and suffer an injury, it might be Carson Wentz. But best in his recovery. Hopefully we do get him rather than the skinny quarterback on Sunday. Hope the best for him. We have a bunch to talk about today. First things first, I've heard some rumors about some trades going on in our league, the league that me and Toady play in. So there's a discussion for George Kittle, who you just acquired.
I did just acquire George Kittle.
And apparently the person who has Kelsey has been in this discussion. Is he looking to give you Kelsey for Kittle and something?
No, he is holding on to Kelsey for dear life by the jockstrap and refusing.
It's a good place to grab, I suppose, if you're looking to hold on to somebody.
Refusing to trade him to me.
So how did these trade discussions even start?
I don't know for sure who started it. I just know I woke up this morning and I looked and I saw I had notification for a trade, and it was Cordell Patterson and Deebo Samuel for Kittle. And I said, this is very, very tempting, but I really want Kelsey. So I declined it and then sent him a counteroffer for Kelsey and Kittle. For Kittle.
Okay, so that's a very interesting trade offer for the person making it. I don't want to throw any names out there, but he already has Kelsey and is trying to go after Kittle. I get that Kittle does have some trade value. Still an interesting, maybe a heady play, depending on how you think about it. Now, you did decline that trade, and yesterday on this show, you said, acquire Deebo. I might be paraphrasing here.
You did.
You did say acquire Deebo at all costs. Right. I would be trying to trade for him and maybe would give up my entire team to do so.
I did not say my entire team. I did not say those
words. I said I was paraphrasing.
Right. But you paraphrased awfully like an illiterate 7th grader.
So why did you not take that when Deebo was on the board?
I was hoping to counteroffer and get trade discussions moving in which I would get Deebo and Kelsey.
How did that go?
Terrible. Kelsey-less, Deebo Samuel-less, Cordell Patterson-less. But hey, got George.
Still have Kittle.
Kittle man, Kittle. All right. Do what you can do for Jesus.
And if Jesus is George Kittle or Deebo or Kelsey, I suppose so.
Yes.
Next thing we got to talk about is Monday Night Football. It was a big comeback win for the Green Bay Packers, 35-17. It was a game for the first half.
I fell asleep at the end of the first half, and I said Detroit might be able to win this. And then I woke up this morning, and they just decided to sit every single starter and secondary guy in the second half and just let the Packers win.
I don't think that was the way they let them win, but not much happened for Detroit in the second half.
No.
They were leading 17-14 at halftime. As you could tell by the screen, score remained the same. So big thing in this game is that Aaron Jones is very good at football. And
Aaron Jones is very good.
We've had some Aaron Jones slander on this podcast, not from me. I don't want to
from me.
I don't even know which way to point that way. That guy. What are your thoughts on Aaron Jones following last night's performance?
Yeah, they found ways to give him the ball right near the end zone, which was nice. 3 easy passes for touchdown. More amazing running numbers, 17 carries for 67 yards. Absolutely beast mode right there. I think he got real lucky. He has these games, is what it is. I think he gets real lucky.
What do you mean real lucky?
They just decide to give him the ball. Like, you're playing a lot.
Of course they do. He's their starting running back.
Right, but Dillon is more explosive for them, though.
No, I watched A.J. Dillon. We'll talk about A.J. Dillon later because I think Aaron Jones' performance is very much linked to A.J. Dillon and what we should think about him going forward.
Right.
But I get you how you could say that the offense helps Aaron Jones, but you could say that about a lot of people. I think that there's other offenses that are good that are the reason you buy into certain players. I think Nick Chubb comes to mind. That Cleveland offensive line is stacked, so that just boosts Nick Chubb's value. I don't think it makes him lucky. It just means that he's on a good team, so that's going to help him get touchdown opportunities. And I think that's what we see with Green Bay and Aaron Jones.
I think that Aaron Jones getting 4 touchdowns in a single game, not happening again. The fact that Davante Adams has yet to score, that's going to change. Number 1 wide receiver in the league. He's going to start getting the ball. Aaron Jones is not getting 4 touchdowns again. I'll be surprised if he finishes with more than 10 touchdowns on the season.
I'll make that bet. Right now.
Right now?
Okay. Right now. We'll talk about our first bet and how that went. Our first bet, I guess, on the record, because we made plenty before the show started. But you're saying that Aaron Jones will score, are you saying 10 or less?
Yes,
or less than 10?
10 or less. I'm saying he will score 6 more touchdowns this year.
Total or just rushing?
Rushing touchdowns.
Well, he only had 1 rushing touchdown last night.
Right.
But I will still say that he will score more than 10 rushing touchdowns.
We will see.
I think you kind of wimped out of that at the very end, but
well, I forgot that they have an extra game, so
that's what it was.
I did.
So you would have done it if there was only 16 games, but that 1 extra game is really the thing holding you back.
Well, and Davante Adams is unable to get to the end zone.
I don't think Davante Adams owners have to worry about that. He will get in the end zone.
But the fact that he hasn't yet.
It's only been 2 games, and the first game was kind of weird. I am not worried about either of these guys. I like Aaron Jones a lot more than you do. Obviously, I don't think it was due to luck. I think it's due to the offense. And we've seen this from Aaron Jones in the past. We've seen him go off for these massive touchdown numbers. It's not really anything that's surprising. This is a team that's going to score points. We saw how the offense looked, albeit against the Lions.
The Lions.
Now, we'll see how they go moving forward, but it was a really good game for them offensively. They did what they needed to do. And I think all of these guys are pretty much where we expected them to be, or where we expected them to be going forward as far as our preseason rankings were concerned. Now, we do have a bet settle before we get to, I guess we could talk about A.J. Dillon, but before we get into that, we did have a bit of a bet. You may have went on a little limb here. I said that Aaron Rodgers would have the better game,
right,
in comparison to Jared Goff.
He did indeed.
And And you said that Jared Goff would have a better game than Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Jones and Aaron Rodgers, yes, both.
Well, neither of those things happened.
No.
Aaron Rodgers was 22-27, 255 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Jared Goff was 26-36, 246, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 1 fumble as well. Pretty costly. He did actually have a weirdly good game on the ground. He had that one read option that he got a big chunky yards for. He had 4 for 46 on the ground. Was the leading rusher for the Lions.
He was.
Had a very good first half. I was slightly worried.
The first half is, I watched the whole first half and I said, I got this bet. And then I went to sleep and Jared Goff just said, Toadie's in bed, so am I. I just decided to not play anymore.
So with that thought process, do you blame Jared Goff's poor performance on you going to bed?
I do. I have to shoulder the sole responsibility for Jared Goff and the Lions turning back into the Lions when I go to sleep and just being god-awful and not knowing how to catch and run and throw and stop their team.
Jared Goff's still a top 10 quarterback, though.
He is.
Keep that in mind going forward. And available in 14.3% of leagues. I don't know if he's on any of your waiver picks. He's not on mine, but it's only because I forgot.
He didn't even make your top 30 quarterbacks beginning of the season. So
yeah, well, I'm a free man to change my mind.
Thanks to Jared Goff.
I mean, I don't think you can thank Jared Goff. Not after
the game he had the second half, no.
We have to decide on something that these bets are going to be worth, too. Because if I keep winning and not getting anything, then I'm going to be pretty upset.
You get my undying love and affection. Well, I possibly need.
Can't say that I want that. We'll figure it out, though. We'll maybe let some audience decide. Who knows? If you have a suggestion,
please
comment it on our YouTube or Twitch, which we are live on right now. So the next person, Aaron Jones, very good game. A.J. Dillon, not as much. I mean, he played fine when he was in. He had 5 carries for 18 yards. That's only an average of 3.6 yards per carry, but Aaron Jones only averaged 3.9, so not that big of a difference there. He also had a catch for 8 yards on 1 target. We just didn't see him in as much as I think we expected at the beginning of the year. A.J. Dillon did say, I expect me and Aaron Jones to run for 1,000 yards at this pace. That doesn't seem like that's going to happen. What are your thoughts on A.J. Dillon going forward?
Yeah, I just think that they didn't utilize him. And I mean, they didn't need to. It's the Lions. I want to reiterate that again. But yeah, they just let Aaron Jones stay in for the majority of the snaps. It's not up yet. The snap. Oh, it is up. There it is. Snap breakdown. Aaron Jones was in 69% of the snaps, and A.J. Dillon was in for only 29% of those. When he was in, he looked good. I feel like they should bump him up a little bit more, give him like 35, 40% of the snaps. He's a great athlete, especially in a longer season. I think it's better to save your primary back, which is Aaron Jones for Green Bay. Better for them to save him and let Dillon get some more carries than to just let Aaron Jones run it 20 times a game when they don't need to against the Lions, especially when they're up by so much in the second half.
Yeah, I expected a lot more out of him too, especially with the lead. I feel like this is the game that, if of all games, you would expect A.J. Dillon to make an impact. Right. It's when they have a big lead in the second half, and the fourth quarter was really inconsequential. Kylan Hill got 2 carries late, which bothered me as well, because if A.J. Dillon gets 7 carries and a catch, then I'm not as worried if we don't see Kylan Hill at all. Right. That kind of worries me a little bit. And I feel like the upside for A.J. Dillon came in where we expected him to get these goal line carries. And I think Aaron Jones's one rushing touchdown came when they were a yard out after a pass interference call, and they handed the ball off to Aaron Jones and relied on him to get the 1 yard. So not having Dillon in, I think during any of those red zone carries or those goal to go carries is not what you want to see as a Dillon owner in fantasy. I think this really plummets his value for non-Jones managers, but I also think there's an opportunity there for it to raise his value for Jones managers. So if you know somebody who has Aaron Jones in your league, and maybe need a little bit of a sweetener to finish a trade for someone else on their team, it might be A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon might be that guy, because if anything was to happen to Aaron Jones, he's going to have a big role.
Yeah. I mean, their next two games are at San Francisco and then home against Pittsburgh. Could be two better, obviously better teams than Detroit. So maybe we have to wait a little bit longer on Dillon, just because I don't see them being up and just being able to run the ball away against San Francisco and Pittsburgh by as much as they are against Detroit.
Mm-hmm. I do see a trade in our comments, and it is a really interesting one. So I want to pause this conversation for a bit. Trod says, should I trade Kelsey for Hawkinson and Justin Jefferson? And that's the first question.
Yes.
I say yes as well. I love TJ Hawkinson. If you know anything about what I've said going into the season, I thought he was going to be a breakout star, and I still think that is going to be the case. Justin Jefferson, obviously a stud too, so I would probably have to do that deal.
Right.
Even though trading away Kelsey's pretty tough, but I think that's a great return if you can get it. Right. And their second question, I don't want to say anything there. I just traded Carson and Rondale Moore for Jonathan Taylor. Win or loss?
That's tough.
I don't know. I
like Moore.
I do like Rondale Moore.
Right.
I don't think he's an indispensable piece. I'm not sure that I would do it if you were ever going to use Rondale Moore. But if your team's stacked and you just responded and said, Jefferson would be great in his flex. So I don't see you ever having to use Rondale Moore. Right. So I think then that's fine. If you were more of a Taylor guy than a Carson guy, Taylor definitely has more upside. So I have no problem with that deal in that case.
Me neither. I like it.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, Taylor has a ton of touches in the red zone and no touchdowns. I think the value on Taylor right now, we're going to probably talk more about trade targets next on Thursday. And Taylor could be a guy right now with the amount of touches he's getting in the red zone and not converting on them. Right. So thank you for your question. Really appreciate it. Back to the Monday Night Football conversation. Let's just wrap this up real quick. The Lions backfield. Swift looked like the main guy there. Jamal Williams did not have the revenge game that I think we were hoping for. No. But I still think that he's a good fantasy asset going forward.
Yeah, I agree. That their Lions backfield is like a 1A, 1B situation with Swift and Williams. I don't see one of them. I like them both, Swift more, but I think Williams is not irrelevant for the Lions.
Yeah, I mean, Swift, I would say, is definitely the one.
Right.
But it's a very good 2. It's a flex play too, and that's more than you would expect out of the Lions backfield. We barely were sure if we were going to get any usable running backs out of this backfield. So to have two is pretty impressive in its own right. Last thing I want to say, Rob Tonyan, I've been scared of him. I mean, he's a very imposing figure, but also not the highest target guy. No. He had 52 catches last year, had 11 touchdowns. We're pretty sure that was going to regress. He had 3 targets, 3 catches, 52 yards, and a touchdown. Yesterday, after having a rough week 1, I don't trust Rob Tonyan, so I am trying to move him as quickly as I can, if that's possible. If it's not, that's probably fair too, because it has only been 1 good week. What are your thoughts on Tonyan? Because I think I might be in the minority here.
On Tonyan, I don't love him as my if he was my starting tight end, I'd be a little worried week in, week out. He's very touchdown dependent. He got 4 targets week 1, brought in 2 of them for 2.8 points, 1.8 points, and 9-point PPR. And this week he got 3 targets and brought all 3 of them in for a touchdown. Like, it's hit or miss. Like, he could lose you your week if he's in your lineup. He can't necessarily win you your week every week.
And I think that's my worry, is that the volume isn't there to really give him that floor. I would look to trade him if you can. I also don't know if there's really a huge market for him at this moment either, though. So that would be more of my concern than anything. Next thing we got to talk about is about 10 million injuries. And I'm going to read off this sheet, and just interrupt me if you have anything to say, because I am going to just try to roll through these. And if you have any quick feedback, I will pause and let you speak.
As you should.
So let's start off with Darrell Henderson, rib cartilage injury. McVay says that they will see about his status on Friday. So that looks like a fairly questionable status going into the week. Obviously, that raises the value of Sony Michel.
Yep.
Josh Jacobs. This was a kind of surprising one that I saw. Very questionable, John Gruden says, heading into week 3, but day to day with an ankle and toe injury. Definitely a big worry, because we didn't see a ton of productivity out of that backfield. So prepare for that. We have the San Francisco running backs. Elijah Mitchell has a stinger. He's day-to-day. He's expected to play. Sermon is pretty questionable. Just a judgment call here, would lean towards him not playing. They did bring in another running back today, who I forget the name of, and I really apologize for that.
Trent Cannon?
No, Trent Canyon is already on the team.
He's on team.
He's a huge man. So I don't want to disrespect him by forgetting his name.
Right.
Because I don't want him to. Jaquez Patrick. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Don't hurt me. He's 6'2", 236. So an absolute unit of a man.
Oof.
If you're playing the Niners next week, who it would be, I don't know who the Niners are playing this week. Jeez, we're having a tough time.
They're playing Green Bay.
They're playing Green Bay. I would not want to be a Green Bay defender or a linebacker having to take him down. So that makes me feel a little bit worse about Sermon. Hasty had a high ankle sprain, and he is going to be out for a few weeks. So how do you feel about this San Francisco backfield?
It's a mess. This one and Baltimore are just 2 backfields that you just want to kind of stay away from. It's kind of hard to pick a guy when, 1, there's so many, and 2, they're made of paper out here. Like, these guys are just dropping. Like, there's more O's and R's on this list than I think most other teams combined. And Mitchell, he's the guy I feel most comfortable with because he's getting the bulk of the carries. 19 carries week 1, 17 week 2. He came back down to earth week 2 against Philadelphia with 17 carries, 42 yards. So I'm not even super high on Mitchell anymore. That's below average running numbers for someone who was most people's number one waiver pickup and then starting him this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's Mitchell's job, certainly. It's what it looks like. It'll be interesting to see if they limit him at all or have to limit him at all because of the injury.
They should limit him.
I expect Sermon to be a bigger part of this backfield when he's healthy, just because he has to be. With all the injuries going on, I would assume he has to be, even though he wasn't on the field much at all outside of the one carry last week. So it's really hard to predict what the Niners are going to do, and especially hard with all of these injuries. OBJ, I heard one report, and it was, I apologize to whoever put this report out, but it was not a very useful one. OBJ could play week 3.
He could.
I feel like, I don't want to say that's bad because honestly, it's very truthful. He could play this week. I think it might actually be right on the money. It might be the perfect report. He very well could. He also could not.
Right.
You don't want to rule anything out.
Right.
So that person is probably going to be right regardless. Like, I just said he could. I didn't say he was going to. Pretty smart, heady play. Another heady play. I got 2 heady plays today. Amari Cooper, bruised ribs, expecting more info tomorrow. If anything is to happen to him, Cedric Wilson, who is available in a ton of leagues, is probably going to see a lot of targets because he was kind of in that Gallup role already. I would expect him to step up and maybe even see more use of the running backs in Dallas if Amari Cooper isn't going to play. Deontay Johnson, we know that it's not a long-term injury, but there's still a lot of concern for this week.
Right.
I heard Mike Tomlin talk about it, and he said that, like, things are okay, but, like, not great.
Right.
So still very much up in the air. Obviously, upgrade Chase Claypool and Juju if anything was to go down there. I actually think that Claypool would be like high wide receiver 2, maybe even into the high or lower wide receiver 1 range.
Sheesh.
If they are to be without Deontay Johnson. You see his like ADOT, you see his yards per catch, and getting more volume could be very, very special thing for Claypool.
Can't see it.
Really?
I don't think he shoots up to a wide receiver 1 again.
On the week.
On the week, maybe, but they're playing Cincinnati. Like,
exactly.
It shouldn't even be that good of a game.
I mean, I don't think Pittsburgh is that much better than Cincinnati.
I don't think either team's good. Like, great, sorry. I think they're both average teams.
Yeah.
But I think
I think they'll be evenly matched.
Right. I think Najee Harris is going to have a better game, and he's probably going to have an explosive week, and then they're not going to really throw it that much. That's just my expert opinion on the matter.
I mean, Dalvin did go off last week, so I can't really say that Najee won't have a great day. Although Najee hasn't had a great day on the ground really yet, this is definitely a great opportunity for him. And I will never say anything bad about Najee. I kind of apologize for saying he hasn't had a good day yet, even though it's true, because, again, another big guy, don't want to hurt me, but also I'm in love with Najee Harris, which is a common known fact. I actually genuinely aspire for his affection.
As you should.
As I do.
Yeah.
Laviska should be available this week with his shoulder injury. And Will Fuller is back at practice, expected to play this week. As for the quarterbacks, Andy Dalton has a bone bruise. Don't really know whether he's going to be back or not. We don't really know much on Tua or Wentz either. We do know that Tyrod is going to be out.
Right.
Do any of these quarterbacks being out really affect their team that much?
Tua and Dalton, those two. Tua, Dalton, and Taylor. No.
Wentz.
Maybe Wentz a little bit for the Colts. Maybe though, because they had a week to practice this week as a team, and I mean Eason didn't look terrible. He looked bad, but he didn't look terrible.
What did he do? I watched the game, and I'm pretty sure he did absolutely nothing besides throw a pick.
He went 2 for 5, 25 yards in a pick.
I would not say that that's anywhere close to good.
Right, but think about it. He only got 5 passes, and 3 of them were caught.
2, you said.
In an interception. It didn't hit the ground.
Wow, okay.
Obviously, you need to learn your football. I think it's a good week for Taylor. So I don't think the team struggles because looking at the running backs, Pascal struggled already that week, even with Carson in.
That's why I don't think it affects the Colts that much. I don't think you were really looking at many Colts receivers as being great options.
And I mean, for Houston, might hurt Cooks a little bit, maybe. We saw it when the second half when Taylor went down that they just couldn't pass the ball, period, with Davis Mills looked atrocious out there. Maybe it hurts him a little bit, but you kind of understand that Brandon Cooks is like high risk, high reward. He'll get you.
He's been pretty safe so far. It's been impressive.
Throughout his career, though?
I don't know about through his career, but so far this season, he has been as consistent as it gets.
Right. I mean, he's on my team. I'm just worried about him. They have the ESPN people, far richer than we are, with all that money and resources, having a 26% chance to bust this week, with only a 6% chance to boom.
I don't know. I don't trust those at all. The only thing I do use that for, and it worked in week 1, was kickers. I'll choose the guy with the least bust potential, but that's about it. I do not trust much that organization puts out. I'm not really worried about any of these guys. Maybe like David Montgomery, if Justin Fields is in, just goal line wise. I don't really think it affects any of the other guys too significantly.
No.
So let's get to our waivers, waiver picks for this week. We kind of talked about this already. It's pretty slim pickings out there.
It is very shallow out here in the waters today.
Which is not a terrible thing, because I feel like sometimes people will force themselves to have a waiver pick, especially people who are higher up on waivers. They'll say, well, I got to pick up somebody. And they waste a waiver pick and drop somebody. And sometimes that second wave of waivers can be just as important as the first wave. So don't feel the need to force a waiver pick. I can give an example, actually. Earlier this year, I have no idea where I was in the waiver order, but I think I was in the middle.
Yes.
This is in the preseason. And all the guys before me used their waiver pickups, and I was the top guy. And it was right when all of the Gus Edwards stuff was happening. And Latavius Murray had just been dropped because he was cut. So I waited it out. I had this moment kind of fall to me, or a player fall to me, where I was fortunate that I didn't waste a waiver pickup. So don't feel the need to use a waiver pickup just because it's waivers and you got to get somebody.
Yeah, don't feel pressured. We're just giving you our 2 cents on who the smart people pick up.
Mm-hmm. And like, I wrote 5 people, but I drew a line after the third because I'm not sure that I would actually pick up those people, my 4th and 5th options, if I was looking for waiver pickups. I might wait and see who's dropped first. So let's get right into it. First waiver pickup, I think, is going to be, there's a chance it might be different. By the way, these are people who are owned in less than 50% of ESPN leagues. There's a chance these could be different, but what is your first waiver pickup?
The Panthers defense.
That is your first.
First. Carolina defense, baby.
Okay, please explain.
They're the only defense this year to have 10 or more points each game. They're about to go play a beat-up Houston team. They're in for a giant week.
Okay.
They got 11 points against New York, or Jets, sorry. Don't want no confusion. They got 11 points against the Jets, and they got 14 points against the Saints. They held the Saints to a terrible game. Kamara getting 5 points. They're about to go play a Houston team with a third-string quarterback. Few to any viable pass catchers on that team. Panthers are in for another huge week. They're my number 1 waiver wire pickup this week.
So the more I look at it, the more I don't hate it, but not for the reasons you said. I do like, obviously.
Fair enough.
I was pretty high on the Panthers coming into the season. I said they were going to make the playoffs last year. I said they needed a year and they would be in. So this is a long time coming for my prediction on them that I have to brag about because obviously I've been in it for the long haul. Although they haven't followed me on Twitter yet, and I'm pretty upset about that.
Yeah.
I would like to see just my bet be validated. The thing about it is I don't like picking up somebody as your first waiver pickup only to be used for 1 week. I get that this is a good matchup with the Texans, but if I'm wasting a waiver pick, and especially a high one, I don't want to just do it for a week and then be like, well, I don't need this person anymore. When there's other guys out there that might not give me as good of a performance for 1 week, but could help me significantly in the long haul. Now, I'm not sure the Panthers are a 1 week option. I do like their defense a lot.
Right.
They're young, they're fast, they're athletic, and they're big in the trenches. Their running defense has been incredible so far this year. Especially, we were a little worried about that after the Jets because stopping the Jets on the ground, I think we could all say, is not the crowning achievement of rushing defenses, but stopping the Saints very well could be.
Right.
I think Alvin Kamara had 8 rushes, 5 yards. So very impressive win last week. They do play the Texans this week. They play the Cowboys next week, which you're probably not going to start them against. But after that, they have the Eagles, which I think there's a chance you start them. They play the Vikings, which is tougher. But if they prove themselves, I think you could put them out there and survive. They play the Giants. They play the Falcons. They play the Patriots. It's not an awful schedule for a little bit of the stretch there.
Honestly, to about week 15.
Their playoff schedule is absolutely horrific.
Right. I'm loving them for the regular season. Until about week 15, which is when, mid-playoffs for fantasy owners. That's when you play Bills, then you play Tampa Bay. You're back in New Orleans for a revenge game, and then you're playing Tampa Bay again. So the end of the season's rough, but I'm not scared of Dallas. Like, I really think that.
Really?
Well, you had Kamara ranked above Zeke, right?
I mean, to start out the year, I did, yeah.
I mean, if you move Zeke up now, then you're kind of an idiot. But they were able to,
played a lot better than Kamara last week.
He did. But Pollard played a lot better than Zeke too. So let's not go down that road unless you want to go down that road.
So well, I guess we'll talk about Pollard later.
Pollard's not. He's got to be rostered in over 50% of leagues. Has to be.
I agree, but he is not.
Oh, so well, if Pollard's out there, get Pollard.
If Pollard is out there, which he is, he's available in 40, or he's available in around 52% of leagues. If he's available, is he your number one guy?
Tony Pollard's my number one guy. I just know that in the 2 leagues I'm in, he was drafted moderately high. Like, he was not even close to even hitting waivers. So I just assume he always is taken. I forget people don't know how to play football and don't understand that Zeke is declining. So
Zeke is not declining. Let's not say that.
Fell off.
He's not falling off. What is he falling off of? I think you could say he's falling off the saddle just because of the cowboy joke, but I wouldn't believe that it's true.
I'd believe it's true.
It's not. I don't know how much I can defend Zeke. Like, he's not bad. He had a very good week.
He did have a good week, yeah.
And he's not declining. He ran the ball fine. He looked fine out there. Because Tony Pollard's also good, we're saying that Zeke's declining. I think both Zeke and Tony Pollard could just be good at football.
They could. And Tony Pollard is showing week in and week out that he is just going to get better and better.
He's shown 1 week that he was worth anything in fantasy. Right. But I do agree that Tony Pollard should be rostered in all leagues.
He
was my number 2 waiver pickup personally.
Oh.
And I'll talk about my number 1 pretty quickly after. He's the best handcuff in football, Tony Pollard, with flex upside. And also, I don't think he's just a handcuff for Zeke owners, obviously with that upside. But I think if you like A.J. Dillon, if you want to make a trade with a Zeke owner and you have Tony Pollard, that is a huge piece to throw in that trade and really get it done. If you're looking to acquire a receiver off of their team or just anyone, a tight end, anything, and you throw in one player and then say, I'll give you Pollard as well, it's a real giant deal sweetener. So I think Pollard has a ton of value, especially for Zeke owners, obviously, but really for anybody going forward. My top waiver pickup, and it's hard to put anybody over Pollard, and this was a tough decision, but I really like Rondale more. I love what I've seen out of him so far as a fantasy asset. I think some of the big things you look at when you're looking for just fantasy value, you want a guy that has the target volume. You want a guy who has the ADOT, the depth of target, and like yards per catch.
Right.
And you want to see that red zone opportunity, and you want to see the offense just show the ability to score at will and give him all the opportunity that he can get. And I think Rondale Moore has that opportunity. He's rostered in 19.2% of leagues. He has 18.75% of the target share, and he's converting over 90% of those into catches. He's tied for second on the team. Obviously, you still have D-Hop there, but I don't think saying that Rondale Moore is the most explosive weapon they have is an overstatement. I think D-Hop's better, but I don't think he's more explosive. He has 23% red zone target share, tied for second, and he's averaging 16.5 yards per catch and 6.5 targets per game. You don't even need 6.5 targets per game when you're getting 16.5 yards per catch to be productive in fantasy football, but he is. And he's getting that red zone volume that really makes him not need to have the explosivity that he does. So I love the numbers on Rondale Moore. I love, obviously, this Cardinals offense is going to be prolific, and especially the passing game. We saw the running game really kind of struggle last week. So Rondale Moore is my number one pickup, and a guy that I would be really happy to have as a flex that I think can turn into a strong wide receiver too. Kind of reminds me of, I know he's smaller, but like similar potential to a Robbie Anderson, where he can have those explosive plays. He can bring that explosive potential. And if he gets the target volume and if he gets those catches, he can be a consistent wide receiver too for you.
Right. I mean, I like it. I'm a little worried that DeAndre Hopkins only had 4 targets that game. So I don't think that's going to be an every week occurrence. I also don't think AJ Green is going to be getting. I don't think he can. He might be consistently getting 6 targets. I think he starts to bring those in. And I also.
I have a question. So you like AJ Green?
He's on my team. I don't love him more than Moore. I don't want that to be.
Is he declining? I think it's
AJ Green.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
But
you're worried about him being in the way of Rondale Moore.
I think that AJ Green had more targets this week than Kirk and Hopkins.
Mm-hmm.
Week 1, he had more targets than Moore and Kirk.
He's also only converting 40% of those targets.
Right. He went 2 for 6 and 3 for 6. Next week he'll go 4 for 6. The week after he'll go 5 for 6. The week after that he'll go 6 for 6.
He's just building it up.
Right.
It's a slow tolerance build. Yeah.
Right. I'm just saying I think that the 4 of them start to it's hard to have 3 fantasy friendly wide receivers in that offense.
I see. That's where I disagree. I think it's hard to have 3 fantasy relevant wide receivers, which I want to make it clear so far the Cardinals do not have. They have only 2.
Right.
I mean, I think we can both agree AJ Green has done nothing fantasy relevant yet. And I would not say, I mean, Christian Kirk had a good week. He had 2 touchdowns, which helped. But we saw that kind of come back to earth this week. D-Hop and Rondale Moore have been the 2 consistent fantasy viable options. And this is not just any offense. This is like one of the most explosive passing offenses in football and probably going to be one of the most pass-happy offenses in football.
I hope so. I have Kyler Murray as my quarterback. He was one of my favorite quarterbacks coming into the year. I just think that temper your expectations on Moore is all I'm saying. I don't think he can be a 1 like how you're kind of.
No, I don't think he can be a 1. I said that. I think he's a flex with wide receiver 2 potential.
Oh, I misheard you. I thought you said he could be a wide receiver 1. I don't think he can yet. Not with DeAndre Hopkins on your team.
No, absolutely not. So those are my top 2 guys.
Right.
Who do you have up next?
The next guy I had was KJ Osborn on the Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
How did you know this? That's crazy.
I didn't even press anything.
Oh, that's awesome.
I didn't even know that you could press anything. Who mentioned anything about pressing? Not me.
Yeah, no, so far this year, he's leading the Vikings in yards. Thielen's leading them in receptions and touchdowns, kind of what people assume. Maybe Justin Jefferson will get better. But Vikings are my team, so I gotta be careful saying this, but we might be down quite a bit this year.
Why would you be down?
We don't really have a good tight end. Our quarterback is Kirk Cousins, so that's just saddening.
Would you be down because you're losing?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make that clear.
Yeah. Just like the Colts.
Well, I didn't say anything about that. I don't think we're going to be losing all the time. I didn't say that we're going to be down a lot.
Right. I don't say a lot. I'm just saying we're going to be down more than we should. But KJ Osborn, he's converting when he gets to catches, or when he gets targets. He's converting. So I think he's an interesting fantasy pickup. Maybe stash him. Maybe a flex if you have people out or injured. 12 receptions for 167 yards. That's pretty good. I think that's worthy of a flex consideration spot.
I like KJ Osborn as a pickup. He is my 4A outside of that must pickup range.
Yep.
If you need him, I think you'll be fine. I have a couple worries. One is just
do tell.
What?
Do tell.
Okay, so one is if you worry about 3 fantasy relevant wide receivers.
Right.
This is certainly he would certainly be the third. So obviously Thielen's getting 24% of the target share, Justin Jefferson 23, Osborn at 17. And none of those targets have been in the red zone, which worries me. I want to see him have those scoring opportunities because especially when there's 2 other guys in front of him,
right,
that's how he's going to have to make it work some weeks. And I don't think that he can't have those.
Right.
He just hasn't yet. So that's what puts him more on the edge of if you need a receiver and you believe in KJ Osborn, go for it.
Right.
But if you're pretty loaded up and you don't really need anybody, I wouldn't be you have to take this guy.
Right. I'm saying he's an interesting pickup. I mean, obviously this week it's a little thin, but week 1 he was in on 81% of the snaps. Week 2 he was down to 59% of the snaps, but he was still able to reel in a touchdown. Still got 6 targets. I mean, if something were to happen to Jefferson or Thielen, they're out for a week or they're a little banged up during the game, I think Osborn, he's already there. He's already proven he can help your team. I think it's just a steady transition in.
Yeah, he's definitely an interesting pickup. There is a receiver. Again, this might be a guy that you just didn't know. We'll see, I guess. Darnell Mooney is really on the cusp. He's available in 40 or 51% of leagues, but he should be picked up in the majority, if not all leagues. Now, yesterday I did voice some concerns about Allen Robinson.
You did,
which
how much you hated
is a fair thing, but I'm also not saying to drop Allen Robinson. So Darnell Mooney has 15 targets. He actually has 22% of the target share compared to Allen Robinson, who has 24. So not very far off at all. I think that he's going to be one. I believe in the talent. I believe he's a very good player. If you watched him all last year, you saw that he doesn't necessarily have the depth of target or the yards per catch as he had last year in comparison to this year, but that's because he's had Andy Dalton throwing a ball for the most part.
Right.
I'm intrigued by Justin Fields getting out there more. If that's a possibility, I would like Darnell Mooney a lot more, and we're getting closer to that coming, I think, because I don't know how the Bears won last week, but it's definitely Andy Dalton's not going to help them win a ton of games going forward, especially as they start playing some of these better teams. So I do like Darnell Mooney a lot. I think he deserves to be rostered in a bunch of leagues. He's not a guy that I'm like, oh, I got to pick that guy up as a flex player or anything like that. But he's a guy that I like going forward.
Right.
Do you have anybody else we should be interested in?
That I'm very interested in? No. Someone who I think is an interesting consideration is like Emmanuel Sanders. He's out there in a lot of leagues. Zach Pascal. He's not available in our league. I have him, but apparently not a lot of people listened to our non-existent podcast last week and still didn't pick him up. But I think Zach Pascal have a good week, and Emmanuel Sanders is an interesting one. But I'm not high.
Those are guys that you think
they could. Right.
Would you put a waiver claim in on either of those guys, or would you try to wait until after waivers and add them?
I'd probably wait. I don't feel super strongly for those guys. I do like them both. I think that they're both going to have good years, but I don't want to wait. I wouldn't waste. Maybe this week I would, since there's not a whole lot of people out here. But yeah, I would. Maybe not your first spot, but if you're like 6th or 7th on the waiver pickup, maybe throw your hand at one of these guys, put them on your bench, and let them prove that how good they are. I don't know.
I had one more that I thought was interesting, but not a guy that I'm picking up just because, like, not a guy I'm desperate to go out and get, and that's J.D. McKissic. Had a big week. He's getting 40% of the share at running back.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, he had 80 catches last year. We can't forget that. I think he's an interesting guy just because of last year they had Peyton Barber, so he was never going to necessarily be the complete guy if anything was to happen to Antonio Gibson. But there's no Peyton Barber this year. As we see, he's chug-a-lugging in Las Vegas. So I think he's a good handcuff. Gibson has run more routes than J.D. McKissic this year. So I'm not like worried about Gibson by picking up J.D. McKissic, but I think that he's just a good guy to hold on to. If you need some more running back depth, is a guy that I would put a waiver claim out for. Although the only guys I think need to be having a claim out for are Rondale Moore, Tony Pollard, and Darnell Mooney.
Panthers defense, number one.
And the Panthers defense, which we have mentioned. So I have some quick honorable mentions. Derek Carr has been off to a hot start. He's owned in 22% of leagues.
He is a little banged up. Just thought I'd let you know.
Yeah, as I think he's fine for this game, though, right?
They said he is. Derek Carr is questionable still. From
what I've seen, he should be good to go. Obviously, off to a hot start. If you're like looking for a quarterback, or I know Rendon, who has another question today. Thank you, Rendon, for tuning in again. Is in a super flex league. If you're in a super flex league, Derek Carr is a great option off of waivers. I think there's a lot of good handcuffs still owned in a slim amount of leagues. Tony Jones Jr. is available in 19.6% of leagues. Alexander Mattison, we saw Dalvin Cook get beat up a little bit. He's rostered in 28.5% of leagues, and Kenneth Gainwell is still out there in 29% of leagues as well.
I think Danny Dimes, interesting one.
Really?
Yeah.
Just the rushing potential?
Yeah, just the fact that he's more of a passer than Lamar, but Lamar's still a better running back. But we put the two of them
Let's not have that conversation again today.
I love getting you riled up. But Daniel Jones is the number 4 quarterback in fantasy so far. Definitely worth looking at, depending on who your quarterback situation is. If you don't have Kyler, Lamar, Patrick, Josh, maybe even Russell, I'd start looking beyond them and going at one of these guys. Or looking at Daniel Jones, sorry.
Yeah, I don't mind that in like 2 quarterback leagues, super flex leagues, shot on Danny Dimes. I do mind it if you're an organization such as the Giants, but I don't mind it in fantasy.
No.
And as for wide receivers, some quick wide receivers to mention, Hunter Renfrow, Cody might have won me over with Hunter Renfrow. He's a target monster. PPR is going to be a monster. He also is getting a ton of red zone targets. He's actually second on the team behind Darren Waller. So Renfrow, I think, has a chance to start converting some touchdowns and having some real fantasy value. So I would hold on to him or add him after waivers. I don't think you need to spend a waiver pick on these guys. Quintez Cephas has 14 targets. He's not converting a bunch of them, but he does have a lot of red zone looks as well, has 2 touchdowns so far. Guy to look out for. Nelson Aguilar is still available in a bunch of leagues. And then 2 IR guys who are eligible to come back after this week. T.Y. Hilton, who I think, despite his old age, will still be the number 1 guy. I didn't say he was bad. I didn't say he was regressing. I just think that he is in his elder years as a football player.
Right.
So that's just a fact. And then Rashad Bateman, rookie in Baltimore, is a good option to look at too. He might take a little bit longer to come along, but these are guys that you are adding after waivers, probably not during waivers. Remember, there's always a great option with your waiver pick, and they are owned and they're available in 100% of leagues, and that is no one. You can always go with no one and then pick up that second wave of guys that get dropped. You never know who's going to get dropped in leagues. Rendon, I know that you mentioned, should I drop Will Fuller for Rondale Moore, which is a really interesting question that we're going to answer in a second. But there's probably somebody out there who's like sitting on waivers, not going to take a waiver claim, and then they get in position to take Will Fuller, which is awesome. So always an option not to pick anybody in waivers. So let's talk about Rendon's question.
Before we move on real quick, someone I just looked at, John Ross. He's on the Giants now with strong arm Danny Dimes. He is on the IR, but he is out for at least the first 3 games of the season. Could come back soon. Someone I'd keep an eye on. I would not use a waiver spot on him, but just someone to keep an eye on. John Ross, speed demon, faster than lightning McQueen.
I just have one letter that I can't write because that pen doesn't work.
Well, that's a good. That's a good. Why? Why not? It's the real question.
Because John Ross doesn't. John Ross might be a great guy. He might do a lot of things, but he doesn't play football. That's one thing that he does not do. And I don't see that change. They have so many receivers there. John Ross is not going to get on the field. I could not disagree with you more.
Hey, teach their own.
I guess. It seems like you backed off that claim real quick.
I didn't say pick them up. I just said interesting to know.
I mean, they have a rookie first-round pick there that they're not using. I don't see John Ross coming into the equation too much. Let's get to Rendon's questions before we hop off for the day. Should you drop Will Fuller for Rondale Moore?
Yes.
I would probably say yes as well. I wouldn't love dropping Will Fuller, but for the option, I just think that Cardinals offense is way more explosive and just going to be a much better passing offense.
Right.
So I would probably say yes. Would you rather have Jared Goff or Tua?
Jared Goff.
I would also say Goff.
Especially with Tua's injury right now.
They're just going to be down in so many games. That defense has not really shown the capability of stopping anybody. I think that Jared Goff could actually be a decent, I mean, in perspective here, like QB2. Maybe I was wrong in my preseason rankings, but that's...
You had him outside your top 30.
Yes, you have said that.
So far, he is quarterback 9.
A numerous amount of times.
Right.
But
I want to stand up for Jared Goff.
Well, I think I'm trying to be a man here and just admit that I was wrong about Jared Goff.
Right. I
will take that.
Right.
And say that he could be a good QB too.
Good QB1 from the looks of it so far.
Yeah. Thank you, Rendon, for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. And that's awesome that you're off to a 2-0 start. I also am. What about you, Cody?
1-2, baby.
Well, that's impossible. But we'll end on that note. Thank you guys for tuning in. Check us out on YouTube. Obviously, subscribe if you haven't already. Ton more coming up. We will be back on Thursday with, what are we doing Thursday? Thursday Night Football. We're going to be going through some trade targets as well. Our YouTube is Your Wildest Fantasy and then the Bracket Football Show. Check us out on Twitch as well. Just Your Wildest Fantasy. Anywhere else that we are? You're at home.
I'm at home.
I'm also at home. I wouldn't suggest that you check us out here. I think that's trespassing. But thank you guys for watching.
Come on over. We'll have a beer. Talk about that.
and yeah, go to Cody's tomorrow because we will not be here tomorrow, but we will be back on Thursday, and we will see you then.
Goodbye, America.